what I'm dreaming of, and hope that I find a friend and lover. God bless the day that I discover another heart looking for love.
Turn your mic up, Brian.
I'm going to figure that out eventually, Charles. So welcome everybody to Two Pastors and a Guest. My name is Brian Callies with Brian Callies Ministries and Saving Lost Kids. My co-host, Pastor Charles Matthews. And y'all might have noticed that music he was playing in the background. That was Charles over here playing on that. We have an amazing show for you tonight. We have a couple amazing guests. We have Steve Ball, who's been on the show before. Steve Ball's with USISB and our efforts of trying to work on sex trafficking, missing, exploited, sex trafficked children, and doing it from the front line. So that's Steve Ball. And then we have a very special guest, an amazing man. This is State Representative Mark White. He has several things he's done besides just represent us and represent the state of Tennessee. He is on the front lines of also caring about families, education. He's written a book, and we'll let you guys know about that. It's called May I Call You a Dad? And also I read on here, Global Children's Educational Foundation Director. So welcome, 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 Mark White. Thank you for joining us.
Nice to be with everyone.
Welcome.
And we're going to have an amazing show tonight. So we're going to talk about all kinds of topics, and specifically some of the ones that Mark, that if I can call you Mark instead of Representative White, some of the things, the awesome things you've seen from your point of view. What do you think in the education and the family situation at home? What kind of things are you seeing that are issues that maybe we need to discuss and have a little dialogue on, and see if we can't get the public and our viewers to connect to that a little bit. So thank you, Mr. Mark, for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So let's start with this. Let's talk about your book for a minute. Let's get so that everybody can kind of get an idea of what your book is. I'm going to put it up here. I think I can do this okay. Let's see if I can do this right. There it is. So this is, tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. It's a book that I wrote really about 10 years ago. I started my career out when I graduated from the University of Memphis, but everybody my age still calls it Memphis State. And I was a teacher and a principal for about 5 years after graduating. And during that time, I really fell in love with children. I was a principal at elementary school for three of those years, and seventh grade teacher 2 of those years, and just really had a compassion for children. The reason I wrote the book, I started working with children in the country of Panama, Central America, about 20 years ago. And children everywhere are the same. And when you, in low economic areas where we work in Panama, all the children, a young girl or young boy is living with the mother by herself. They were starving to death. Children weren't going to school. All the things we see. And so I wrote the book of all the things that when you have the parent, father, missing, all the things that the home lacks. And so the book basically is divided in really 13 chapters. And it talks about the things that a father should be there for: unconditional love, protector from predators and abusers, a guide to faith and spirituality, encourager of self-worth, a role model, listener, and on and on. And so put that together, and it's just been a passion of mine. And now I've been fortunate enough for the past 11 years serving in the Tennessee General Assembly to be the chair of the Education Committee for the past 7. And you see the same things. One of the things we're really having trouble with in our schools today is too many children coming to school without a proper home and a safe environment and background. And so working on that. So that'll kind of get the conversation started. We can start asking questions and talking about that, but don't want to keep monopolizing.
Not at all, man. Man, every time I see you and hear about what you do, I just want to give you a hug. Charles and I and Steve, we get to work together in a lot of different areas, and it all usually revolves around children. And we're seeing those same situations. So just to mention, in the missing, exploited, and sex trafficking side, one of the easiest ways for children to be taken advantage of is by having a broken home. So when you have that broken home and something missing out of the home and that's not stable, that leads to a lot of things afterwards that then we have to kind of get involved with.
Right.
Steve?
Yeah, I understand this from several different points of view. For some reason, my whole life, I've been the protector. I've been a military, firefighter, law enforcement officer, and a stepdad. Now, my two boys, and I say my two boys because they're mine.
Amen.
Right? I raised them. I taught them. They're mine. My oldest is you would think he was my own blood. He's so much like me, but it's one of those things that you have to look at personally sometimes. Instead of from a broad point of view, you have to get up into the micro to really look at it and say, okay, this is what really affects a child. Okay, if you don't have a father figure in the house, now when I became these two's stepfather, they were a little out of whack. I'll say that. That's being generous probably, but they were a little out of whack, and it took a while. It took a while for us to mesh, but once we did, I was able to teach them what it meant to be a responsible person, to grow up to be a man. I know a lot of times it's not PC to say that, but I wanted them to be men. I wanted them to be gentlemen. I wanted them to be responsible. And a lot of times a single parent can't do that. Sometimes they can, but a lot of times they can't. And
it's interesting that you just nailed, I'm looking at the table of contents of your book there, Mark White. So what's so funny is that you just nailed so many things that are on your list of what, Mark, you say is important. So a father, I'm just going to read a couple of them. So a father, these are different chapters in your book. A father as a provider of meaningful education, a father as a provider of unconditional love, a father as a protector from predators and abusers. Wow, Charles, have we not seen that? A father as a guide to faith and spirituality, and a father as encourager of self-worth. That's just a couple of them, but you were just touching on that, Steve.
Yeah.
luck of the draw.
Yeah, and that's what the main chapter, well, not the main chapter, one of the chapters, the one on unconditional love. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I also have one child, one daughter. She's was a stepdaughter, but those are fighting words. Once they're coming to your home, they're mine, and they're biological as any child. And so we were very, very close. I actually adopted her years later. But like you, I when I married the first time, I was 31. My wife had a 10-year-old daughter who I love very much and who loved me. But she hit the teenage years, and like you said, you do start to butt heads in those teenage years, and all the things we won't go into that the child's going through. But I woke up one day and says, you know what? It doesn't make any difference if this child ever loves me. I've had the responsibility. She's the child. I'm the father. I'm going to love her. And I put that unconditional love. And within 2 or 3 years, she turned around as a teenager, and we're closer than blood to this day. And she's now a 50-year-old woman.
Took a little time for that to in pastoral terms, Charles and I will say, you plant a seed, but then you have to give it time to grow. Right. So when you were planting, it seems that unconditional love piece, but they probably didn't take it right off the bat, did they?
Not right off, because in teenagers, and we are, even a biological child in the teenage years is tough. but someone coming into a home. But I loved her very much. Today we're thicker than blood and think more alike than anyone. So that it's a good relationship. But as the adult, you've got to realize that you've got to give that unconditional love, and then it turns around.
It does. Mine were 9 and 3, 2 boys, and the 9-year-old was fairly resentful at first. Then he figured out I wasn't the enemy.
Right.
And things that I did with him and for him, he started slowly coming to appreciate and know that, okay, there is somebody there for me. Because I made it a point. I'm there for you at all times, no matter what.
Yes.
And through the teenage years, yeah, there was some conflict. Not any bad conflict. I always seemed to talk to him, use kind of like the law enforcement perspective, never raise your voice, talk in a calm, clear manner. Don't escalate. So that seemed to work pretty good with him. And
Sounds
now,
smart.
now as a grandfather, he's coming to me saying, I remember you telling me about so-and-so. You were right. So, it's those things, but it's, it's nothing better than looking at your children after all these years and seeing that they have become a good person.
What do y'all think? What do y'all think about that? Kind of teeter-totter of what a lot of people are saying today is that parents are almost becoming like they're a friend more than a parent. Do you guys see that a lot as an issue, or is that a good thing? I know that was a hard question, but
yeah,
that's what we do. I just wanted to get your take on it.
Yeah. Well, I just say this: you do have to be the parent. It's tough to be a parent. I'm thinking what a lot of parents are going through right now in the past 6 to 8 weeks that we've all had to be in home and no school and things. Being a parent, responsible, getting them up, making sure that they are getting those few hours of school, whether it's virtual or in the home. There's a lot of responsibility there. I know when my daughter was probably 14 and 15, and she wanted to go out one night, and but she was underage and it was late, and she wanted to go with some friends. I said, absolutely not. And she was mad at me. But you've got to set perimeters, because we know as adults what's out there and what harm could come to a 14 or 15-year-old girl out on the streets, after 10 o'clock. And so you got to set guidelines. You just can't because they want to. And sometimes that's where the friction comes. But you've got to be the parent, and you do it out of love, because you know what's out there and what could harm them. So yes, you can't just be a friend. You've got to be the one who has the experience and the wisdom to know what's best for that child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I did start out with discipline. There were rules to be followed.
Mm-hmm.
The rules were non-negotiable.
Oh, so you did the ultimatum theory of, is that what you mean?
No, there was no ultimatum. Ultimatum says you do this, or there was no highway option.
Oh, well, okay.
All right. This happened. There was a consequence. That's all it was. Now, they weren't dire consequences. I didn't beat my kids or anything else like that. I didn't have to. But you have to temper the discipline with understanding. And you have to understand, number one, these are children. Their brains are not fully developed. They're not going to understand what you're getting to. I'm a very logical person. I used logic, but they didn't quite grasp it. You have to use kind of like parables and other type stories to let them know, okay, this is what can happen. This is why I don't allow this. And it's because I love you. I don't want anything to happen to you. But while you're being the disciplinarian, you can also be the teacher. Now, when I'm saying teacher, you're teaching your child something in a bonding type environment. Do something together. Don't teach him, you're going to do this. Do something with the child that will teach the child and also bond with the child. That really is what turned the corner with me and Parker.
Yeah, and I wrote the book really later because of the experience. Boy, I wish and we all do. Don't you wish we could go back and do it again? Now that I have a little bit of that experience, because I'll think back on some of the opportunities that I missed, where if I just sat down and listened a little bit more, or was a little bit more attentive and spent a little more time, and now when they say something, I said, oh, that's what you meant, but experience, but we all need to learn from experience. But that's why I put the book together, is there's 13 reasons that we need fathers in the home, and mothers. My mother, when I wrote the book and took it down and gave my parents a copy, she said, why didn't you say, may I call you mother? Why mothers are needed in the home? And I said, well, as a man, I see what I've seen too many times. The man is the one that's been absent, and that's not true in a lot of cases. I know that a lot of times mothers will leave the home too. But I wrote this specifically for dads, as a man myself, that we have a responsibility, and when we're not in the home, children suffer. And I tell you,
when we're not in the home, children suffer. That's amazingly right.
All the way across the board, and we could talk for hours and hours. I know we got Pastor Charles in here too, and he might want to jump in, but I can just tell you stories all night long about working with children in Panama. But whether in Panama or the United States or Tennessee or on the other side of the world, children are children, and they need parental discipline and protection and love.
Well, for our viewers, real quickly, I want to make sure the viewers know this. So we're talking about today, and we're going to be probably talking from that angle. You got 4 guys in a room, but for the mothers that are out there that unfortunately might be in that situation where there isn't a father in the home, we're not at all trying to exclude you. What we're trying to do, though, is show how important it is to have that father figure. And if you are a single mother, I think we'd all agree. Remember, I work with kids that get in trouble with missing, exploited, and sex trafficking. So one of the common themes is, if they don't have a male role model in their life, that's a void, and voids don't like to be voids. So somebody is usually going to come and try to fill that void. And you have to be extra attentive to who's going to be filling that void. You can maybe find them as a mother. Maybe you can find somebody that will be a role model for the child. So you're filling that void for them. But if you don't do that, then what I see, it may be a little controversial, but what I see is, if you don't fill that void, a lot of times the bad guys are going to take advantage of that void, and they're going to fill it with something that is not good for them. And those kids will cling on it like you wouldn't believe they'll cling on it, because they just have that emptiness. So, and single mothers, I give you all the credit in the world. You have a very, very hard job. You got 2 jobs that you have to kind of fill, and super hard. And so, we're not trying to discount that, but we are wanting you to hear from men that are in the room how important it is to have a father in the home. And if not in the home, then connected, so that when they have especially if it's a boy, if a boy has a question, there's some questions only a man's going to answer for them. That's my opinion anyway.
I agree.
Man. Amen. It's awesome that this segment here is talking about that, and it's a great thing, because even now I have biological children, and I'm married again now, and my wife and I, she had 2 children when we got together, and you won't know the difference between them and my biological blood children, because I never made a difference. And when I got here, they was actually older children. They was old enough to, kind of, I got in here in their teenage years, but the fact of the matter is that I embraced them like I had been in their life forever.
Wow.
And that's important, even in a child's life. And the thing about it is that even around my house. And what I've done, I'm a researcher of words to make sure that I understand things and understand them. So what I did was I used to have a problem with the word step, and it's still something I don't necessarily use, no stepfather, stepchildren's. And then what happened was that, watch this, I would tell my son, I tell my son, look, we don't use the word step around here. I'm your father, and the reason is why is because we don't step on each other. But then I went and I said, but let me research it, because the word step may not be as bad as I perceived it to be all these years. And I went and I researched it, and the word step actually meant support. So that's our job as fathers, as real fathers. Our job is to support, as Mark said, protect, listen to, and all those things that's wrapped up in one. So, and what happened is that it built an awesome relationship with I and my children here, as well as my children, my biological children. So to them, they're sisters and brothers. And nobody can tell them anything different. They communicate with each other, they talk to each other. And if don't nobody know without me telling them, nobody never know the difference, because we don't treat each other in no other way. So the thing about it is that it's important in being a father. And I had wrote a few things down real quick, and I want to say this and why a father is important. And I had wrote, children want to make their fathers proud. And involved fathers promote inner growth and strength. It's a fact. When you're involved in that child's life, you promote growth and strength. And that's important, because we are our children's teacher forever, no matter how old they get, no matter what, where they go. We will always be their teacher. We're their first teachers, and we'll be their last teachers. Because no matter what, I always say, the teaching begin at home. No matter how many times we send them to school and they get the educational part of it, when they come home, we got to teach them the morals, the ethics, what it takes to make it in life. Teach them to have the morals and ethics to want to work and have things for themselves. Teach them how to survive. Teach them how to respect and honor people, and especially most of all respect themselves. So it's important that us as fathers, we continue to be that example and not that exempt, because we are the ones that a lot of times especially with our boys, they look up to their fathers a lot, and a lot of times they patterns after us. So it's important that we know that we got to be careful what we do, watch how we do it. Even talking to them, I tell my sons, my children, I say, listen, I'm your father, and I respect you because I expect you to respect me. And in order for you to respect me, I got to give you something, and being the teacher for you to have to be able to give the respect. So I thank God that with that being said, they all understand that way. You got to understand, and with your children, that they understand, guess what? I'm not your enemy. I'm not here to ridicule you, but you ain't gonna like what I say all the time. You're not going to agree with it all the time, but I'm doing it for your sake, and I love you so much, and I want to see you be the best you could ever be, because that's my job as a father. Yes, I want to know where you're going. So what, you may be 25, 30 years old. I want to know where you're at, because I want to know, just in case I need to come and make sure you're okay. I need to know where you're at. I want to know what's going on in your life, what your life plans are. Those things are important to me. I don't care how old you get. They're important to me. I want to know when you plan on retiring.
I agree with you totally, buddy. Totally agree. Well, let me ask you, panel. So, being a little honest again, I don't know that I've seen education improve a whole lot in my lifetime to get us to that place that, like Mark would even say in his book, I think education is a big issue that we've got. And when I went to U of M, I went to University of Memphis as well. And it was kind of sad in a way, because one of the professors that I had was just on the edge of retirement. And she told me how education in her mind had dropped so far that they have to dumb down the tests to get people to pass. Now, this is her point of view. I looked at the tests were plenty hard enough for me, so I had no problem with that. That was a calculus thing. But in her mind, education has kind of done this. What are your thoughts?
Well, one of my best friends in the world is a retired teacher. She taught middle school or junior high, whichever you prefer to call it, science. After 27 years, she decided to get out because she could not teach science and scientific equations to children who could not do the math. And that was because of Common Core. And Common Core is a problem that I don't know. I've tracked it back to 1977.
All right, we're going to have to get onto that right after our commercial break, because I need to hear the untechnical version of what Common Core is. And I want to hear, Mark, I want to, Representative White, I want to hear your take on this. You are an education guru when it comes to this. So let's do a quick commercial break. So I got Cindy Hutchison, and there she is. Wonderful. And can you hear me okay, Cindy?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? I'm crooked.
Yeah, you might want to just turn your phone or device sideways and then back again, and it'll probably straighten that out. There you go. How are you, Cindy?
Great. How are you doing?
So, Cindy, tell us real quickly about yourself.
I'm a health coach, but I'm also a clinical pharmacist, and I work mainly with people who have diabetes, high blood pressure, and hypertension. And I work trying to help people make good choices and trying to figure out what their goals are. There's nothing, I personally kind of like to make my own plan. Maybe I'm a little bit, I'm a little stubborn, I'll be honest. But if I go to a primary care or a doctor's office and they tell me what I should be doing, I don't really, that to me is not a way that I learn or respond well. But when someone links arms with me and says, hey, what do you want? And what can we do to make your life better? Then I like that. I like that.
So, well, Cindy, just so you guys know, so Cindy and I, and along with a couple other health coaches, have got together and they talked me into a plan to help me to get my life into a healthier place. And so I went ahead and agreed to do this plan, which is going to start Monday, is when my big day to get started is.
Awesome.
And so I'm going to be losing hopefully about 50 pounds, but the game isn't just to lose weight. It's just to get myself in a healthier place. So the doctors don't go, Brian, your cholesterol's high and your blood pressure's high and all those things. So it's going to be an amazing, amazing opportunity. And so Cindy, I want to thank you for being my health coach and helping me through this. Can you tell me a little bit, you found something that I wanted to.
This was interesting. This was interesting to me. This is from JAMA, which is the Journal of the American Medical Association. And it came out last Wednesday and on the 22nd. And what this did is this is a case study. So this is a study of people in New York City, and there were 5,700 patients that they looked at that were hospitalized with COVID-19 between the dates of March 1st and April 4th. So this is but looking back at people, it's called a case study. And what they found is the most common, besides COVID-19, the most common diseases that people had, and that's what I wanted to share with you, the most common comorbidity or other disease is what that means, was hypertension in 57% of the people, obesity, which is a BMI greater than 30, in 41.7%, and diabetes in 34% of the people. So I thought about this and I thought, well, what should we respond? How should we respond to this? Or the patient population that I work with, should we respond in fear? No, I don't believe in responding in fear. I believe that God is in control. He's in control of the COVID virus. But what helped me, because I honestly was pretty anxious at the beginning of all this, what helped me a lot was, and I listened to a talk, and this person helped me, and I made a little graph of what I could control and what I couldn't control. And I where do you think COVID goes in there, Brian? COVID virus, where would that fit?
Well, in my opinion, it fits a little bit in both. That's my personal opinion. So there's some things I can do, like observe the precautions and do the mask, and there's things like that. I can also, based on what you were saying, work on my weight and my health and improve my health so I'm not such a high risk. But there's another part to that God's totally got, because it's the stuff that I can't do. So that's my personal opinion.
I'm with you. So I put the actual virus, what I can't control, we cannot control the COVID virus. What you can control is your response to it, washing your hands, trying to keep your family healthy. And just, I want to encourage you to not have fear if you have any of these conditions. Don't be scared. Make one positive choice. Do one good thing for yourself. Turn off the TV and take a walk. Eat an extra fruit or vegetable instead of junk food. Do something good for yourself where you can say, you know what, I'm making good choices. I'm going to choose to work on my health. And don't be scared. I don't want to, to bring fear in anyone's life.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much for coming on and telling us that important news. And I want to be open to our audience. So if anybody wants to join me on this health journey, that's what I'm doing. Is I'm doing this health journey, and we're bringing a bunch of our friends with us. So jump on this thing. Cindy is not going to charge anything for her time and her guidance and her education. And so we got a couple of other health coaches that'll do the same, and they'll assess you where you are in your situation, just like they did me. And on Monday, we're going to start this adventure together. And my goal, lose 50 pounds. My goal is to get my cholesterol down, all those things, get rid of the pills, and just get in a healthier place. So Cindy, thank you so much.
I lost 41. So I did it. You can do it.
Wonderful. Well, bless you, Cindy. Thank you so much for your time. You have a great day.
Thank you. You as well.
By the way, it's beautiful where you're at. Unless that's a background. Is that one of these background things?
Oh, I'm sitting on my courtyard.
Wow. That's beautiful. All right. I'm gonna have to make a trip over there. So
let's do it. I'm ready.
Thank you, Cindy. All right, we're back. Two pastors and a guest. We have an amazing guest with us. We got Tennessee State Representative Mark White with us. He's also an author of an amazing book, May I Call You Dad? And we're talking, and we have Steve Ball, agent with the USISB, working on missing exploited sex trafficking. We got Charles Matthews, my co-host. And let's get back to our topic. We were talking about education and how it's maybe changed in the last blah, blah, blah years. What do you have to say about that, Mark?
Wow, it's, what a topic! I've been fortunate for the past 7 years while serving the Tennessee General Assembly to serve as either the sub-chairman or the full chairman of the House Education Committee, and so over those years, spent thousands and thousands of hours listening to conversations about, how do we best educate our children in the state, and what is the role of the state. Of course, we all know that the education of a child, in my opinion, it does begin in the home. Of all the reasons that we have to believe in an eternal God, one of the best, in my opinion, is the fact that He created the home first, and it's that home, that institution of the home is where the child from birth, 0 to age 3, 0 to age 5, is where when that brain is developing. I read the other day, there's all these brain studies now where, the first 2 years of life, there's like 2 million brain cells a second developing. And those cells have got to, as they connect, those neurons, they've got to be challenged. That's why parents' responsibility to read to that child, talk to that child. And if you have a child in a home, or the lack of a home where that brain is not being developed between 0 and 5, when it comes time for them to go to school, that is a lot of the challenges that we have. A teacher trying to teach a child to read that doesn't have the vocabulary and things that a child that has a good home background starts out behind. And so right now in Tennessee, and Tennessee's not uncommon, but only about 34% of all students who get to the end of third grade are reading on third grade level. And we're really—
What's that percentage again?
34%. 1 out of 3 children, only 1 out of 3 are reading on third grade level. 2 out of 3 are not.
Whoa. Now, there's another statistic goes with that, right? Something about the prisons, and I've heard about it, but I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you're not reading 4th through 12th and on through higher education, if you can't read and comprehend, then the rest of your educational years are just a struggle, and therefore that's where dropout comes from, or lack of motivation. You just don't understand anything, and so there are statistics, and I have some in my book that most of the men and women that are in prisons do not read well. They never learn, and so that education is so very, very important. In every category, 85% to 95%, everything where you have the lack of a intact home with a father, I think it's around 90% of all teenage suicides, lack of a father in the home. Most young men that go to prison because they don't have a father in the home, and the education is a part of that. So education. So in the education committee, what we're dealing with, we're taking this issue of why only 34% are reading on grade level. Why is it so difficult? And we have all the things as talked about a second ago. We're looking at different standards. What are we teaching in school and things of that nature? But it starts in the home, and if we don't get a handle on this is one reason I wrote the book. We really got to get a handle on this, or we will never be able to have the educational system that we want in this country or in the world, because the home.
When you say that, so when you say we get a handle, do you think that's a responsibility of the government side? But I'm hearing you say it's a real responsibility on the family side of things.
It is, and you make a good point. But where we struggle with in our education committees is even though it is the family's responsibility to get a child ready, if it's not, we just can't say, well, we can't do anything about it. We have, and there, like I said, the thousands of hours I spent over the number of years going around the state, looking at schools, going to other states. Teachers work so hard, and
Amen.
Everyone is really trying. It's just a difficult task. It's just that when you remove that factor of that child coming out of a background where there is not a home environment to give them a head start, what you should be, then education is very tough. Not that it cannot be done, and that's why our teachers are working so hard. We've got legislation that we had to put on hold this year due to the COVID, when we had to recess on March the 19th, that we were going to really challenge our elementary school teachers and our universities that train teachers on teaching how do you teach a child to read. There is a scientific process, the phonetic process, and that's not being taught in our colleges right now as teachers come out. I went through with an education degree from University of Memphis, and but even to this day, teachers who come out of a university to be a teacher, they're not being taught how to teach a child to read.
Wow. Well, you know what? I think in a way, thanks to the COVID thing, and we're all having to stay home, I think the whole nation is a whole lot greater appreciation for teachers.
Yes.
Because from what I hear, a lot of parents want to go and find whoever teacher that is and give them a big hug and thank them, because now they're experiencing all the stuff that the teacher sees from their point of view. And from disciplinary stuff, I mean, because teachers are so underappreciated. They're not just teaching the little education piece. They're teaching manners. They're teaching, right and wrongs. And they're teaching, what you're allowed to get away with, and repercussions for things like, if you do this wrong, then this is going to happen. If you don't do your homework, this is going to happen. Man, they teach a lot.
Yeah. Well, the hardest jobs in the world today.
And you were a principal, right? So I couldn't imagine how difficult that job is, and how underthinked it is most of the time. Go figure.
The children are beautiful things, and one thing I throw in there. The older I get, I believe that we're born with an unusual type of wisdom that we lose as we grow older out of a child, because children get it. They're so innocently honest, and they understand things so well. And that's why it's the responsibility of the parent in that home that you listen to them, because if there's a dysfunctional parent in the home, who picks up the slack? It's usually that child or one of the children, because they have this amazing amount of wisdom and maturity, especially when it's forced upon them.
Wow.
That's awesome, Steve. Even with you saying that, I mean, Mark, and it always just makes so much sense because, like you say, it's really important. And if there's something going on with a dysfunctional parent in a home, that's like not all of them. You know, one of the children's actually, you know, takes up that slack, and imagine how that affects them. You know, with their education, because it takes away from them being able to study the way they do, thinking right and thinking positive and thinking effectively. So I can imagine even being a parent, you know how that can affect children, and the fact of the matter is that even with your book, and everything, that it's awesome that you have a book that talks about fathers and what it takes for a father, and their roles and their expectations, and I always say, I just believe with a good father, they don't even look at expectations. They just go above and beyond. They just don't have a limit on what I do for my child and how I do it to make sure that they're okay from the educational part. And like you said, at home is where it started. We are our children's teachers forever. And it's important what they get at home helps them in school and education, support from the financial part to every other part. Because a lot of times I've heard children say that had dropped out of school, and I would talk to young men and mentor them, and they would say, I was like, why do you not want to go to school? Why did you drop out of school? And a lot of their answers is because they don't have any support. They know when they come to their parent, nobody's supporting them. They don't have proper clothes. They don't have nobody to talk to when they're going through problems at school, and they just say they'd rather not be there. So they just run away and just forget school. Yeah. But then what happens when that child becomes that person that Mark was just talking about, that drops out of school, he end up in penitentiary or dead or somewhere. And now, where we can help at, and I'm saying this because where we can help at, the ones of us that can, I think we need to come together and be strong in those areas to see what we can do more about helping these children, because there's so many, whether we realize or not and see them, there's so many children that need our helps, as fathers. And I tell people, just because you didn't birth, as Steve was just saying a little while ago, just because you didn't, you're not the, biological father of that child, that don't mean that that's not your child. You can be a father. A father means, guess what? Man, I don't have no limit to who my child is. I love every child. If I can help you, I want to help you. If I can support you, I want to support you. If I can be an example for you, I want to be an example for you, because that's the role of a father.
Right.
Well, one of the things that I was getting into before, I was saying I could track it back to 1977. When we federalized the educational system, I think that took a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. Inner city schools cannot be compared with suburban schools, cannot be compared with rural schools. They can't be governed, they can't be managed the same. They're all different. And the problem I had with what I noticed as I was raising my two kids, I would look at their textbooks, and that what was in their textbooks was not what I learned. History had rewritten itself.
Okay.
And
yeah, I can see that.
And the thing is, they were telling me, as did a lot of others, high school and college age. Mm-hmm. They complained that they were teaching them what to think instead of how to think.
Okay, that makes logical sense.
I think that's a huge thing And especially with, okay, if you're teaching them one thing at home, they're teaching them something else at school. Where's that line? And what do the kids do with it? You know, you've got to be involved and know what they're being taught.
Well, Mark, you know more
So I
about
think
that
of
one
one
than I
movie
would.
quote, what are they doing in my name? So, and I just don't think education is a one size fits all type of enterprise. So I never was for the federalization of the schools. I think the state and the counties can do that better because they are more in touch with their particular surroundings and their particular problems, because everybody has problems. Every school system is going to have a problem. Well, it's not all going to be the same problems.
Okay. Do
So
you agree with that, Mark, or are you?
Well, yeah, one of the things that we struggle with, or not, I shouldn't say use the word struggle, but you got to keep in mind, for just take Tennessee now, under Senator, a number of years ago, under Senator Lamar Alexander, they changed, or they took a lot of the federal stuff off and gave it back to the states. It's called Every Student Succeeds, ESSA. And so we have the major responsibility currently. But one of the issues is urban versus rural communities. A lot of times we have urban issues that are not the same as rural. Now, I have visited schools not only in Memphis, but I've gone to extreme Upper East Tennessee, and really the problems are the same. You go up to Appalachian, East Tennessee, and they're struggling with the same thing with meth and a lot of things in East Tennessee, as we're struggling with other things in West. So the problems are common. Now, what we try to do as a state, though, we've got to have 147 school districts across the state of Tennessee. So we do have to have enough unity where we're saying, okay, guys, it's important. And I mean, okay, we could talk another hour on this, and I see that our time is getting close. But one of the things, we have to have an educated workforce so that we can bring businesses into the state of Tennessee. Without an educated workforce, all these companies, now Tennessee has really grown for the past 10 years. In Nashville, the capital is, if you've been up there, that just went crazy up in Nashville. And we're seeing it in Memphis now and East Tennessee. So we had to have an educated workforce. So if we're going to do that, we got to make sure that all 147 school districts are on a particular growth pattern where the children in that community and district are being challenged. So we have enough uniformity, but we still give an awful lot of latitude to the local school districts in educating. But it is a challenge, but won't get too far in the weeds on that. But
Well, I see what you're saying, though. So to me, logical side of me would say, well, if I take calculus in place A, place B, place C, it should be the same blue in calculus, same blue in class. If I take English, should all translate. It didn't happen because I moved around the country a little bit. I went from Oklahoma to Chicago, and what I learned in one and learned in the other were not even compatible. And so I get to write down that I have English 1, but it's not the same English 1 as we had over there. So I would think to see that kind of maybe a little more coalesced would be smart, just to give another viewpoint.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we're really seeing it right now, with 147 districts, some districts, since we've been out of school since around March the 19th or 20th, some districts have carried the virtual education right on. Some districts don't have the broadband and they can't do it. And some districts didn't even really have a good plan. And so I heard about one today in one particular county, but some are knocking the socks off. So the state has a responsibility to make that sure that everyone is doing what they should do the best. Because, by the way, the state of Tennessee, we put in between K through 12 and higher education, we put in over $11.5 billion into education in the state.
11.5 billion. What percentage is that? Just to give me an idea, do you know about the percentage of what the budget is that goes to education ish?
Yeah, well, it's right around 30%. Almost our state budget this year, we had to pull back $1 billion due to the COVID, but we about $38 billion. So when you got 11 and a half, pushing 12, you're talking about right at the 30%, not quite a third.
Whew. That's well, I mean, and good for it. I think that's great. I think educating the kids is the goal for our future, or the results in our future. So
Yeah.
I did have a quick question for you guys too. So one thing, we were talking about education, so if we can just stay on that for a second. So now we've got 6 minutes left, so we'll try to keep our answers a little short. But I see there is a lot of need and a lot of push right now to get kids more tech education than just say college. And I get it, because I just got a new air conditioner put in, and that guy had no college, and I just paid him, when it's all said and done, I paid him about $200 an hour to do his job. Now that is better than I get paid. So,
Yeah.
so it took him trade school, what, a couple of years to maybe get that under his belt enough to do that.
Or less. Yeah.
I can't knock that.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and that's where we're really pushing on the last 8 years of Haslam, and now the first couple of years of Governor Lee. We're pushing vo-tech education like we never have before, because that's where the industry, that's where the jobs are. And you can become a welder coming out of high school, or you can get a certificate, which is 12 weeks. Plumbing, HVAC, all these things, $70,000-$80,000 a year. Medical device here in Memphis, 3 years you'll be making six figures. The vo-tech is where the things is, 4 years are great, but 2 years or certificate trade school is highly important in today's economy.
And what's it cost if I was a student just getting out of high school and I wanted to think about going to college, like a trade school?
Well, in Tennessee, it's free, but we have the Tennessee Promise, which is paid for any high school student that does the application while he's a 12th grader. You come out, you can go to a trade school or 2 year with last dollar paid for out of the lottery money it's called the Tennessee Promise. So it's free in Tennessee.
There you go. It's almost like there's not an excuse to not do something you can make six figures in. I mean,
No excuse.
seriously.
No
one
excuse.
last topic here. We got about 4 minutes, and Mark, I'm going to quote something out of your book, if that's okay for a second. You put it in big and bold, and this is on your page 35, just so you know. The value of a father leading a child to faith is unquestionable. And so now I got a pastor in the room, Pastor Charles Matthews there too. So comments on that, Charles?
So what? I can feel that, and I can relate to that. And I can believe that deeply. That statement is awesome, and it's true, and it's effective. I mean, because it means everything. The value of a father, it means everything to a child, because children look for value in their father when they don't look for it in nobody else.
So leading a child to faith, it's important to have a male role model in that.
Yes, it's important. The reason why it's important, because first of all, there are things in life, situations that's going to come about in a child's life, just like in our life. They don't have that faith, to conquer them and want to, achieve them, and they don't have nobody to help build that. Then normally they fall and they don't make it. So it's important to have that type of father that would build your confidence or build your faith up. And me myself, with my children, it was important to keep God instilled in them. That's me. And it made a difference now, because it's paying off in it, and it shows. Because like I said, I thank God, the man, he are blessed, and my children are all doing well. They have great jobs, and they are respectful, they manable, they considerate, and they concerned about other people, and they giving back now. Because see, a part of my teaching them the faith and all that stuff was a part of them to give back to people that need it. And when I say give back, it ain't necessarily a shirt or some money or a pair of shoes. It's a kind word. It's a helping hand, all those things. And I would teach them, no matter what, don't ever look at the condition or the situation of the handicap or disability of no one. Never let that matter. Just love everybody and help everybody you can.
Yeah. If just to throw this in real quick, if a father can give their child two things, one thing is give them an education so they can support themselves as they grow older and them and their family. But the first thing you need to give that child is a faith.
Yes.
And you have those two things in your life, and I believe you can pretty well make it. And I cannot emphasize the faith part enough. That, you know, that's where when life gets tough, if you don't have faith, it's just tough. And because as a firm believer in God and everything, He created us. He knows how we work, and we need to listen to that.
Yes.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
I agree
And
with
you
you.
need to live it. You need to live it, because a child will emulate their parent, especially a boy will emulate their father.
Yes.
And I think the most worthless thing I ever heard, and my parents never said it to me, was "Do as I say, not as I do." Well, that's just wrong in so many ways, because a child is going to do what you do. I mean, I've noticed it. Parker is more like me than I would have ever thought he would be. They emulate you.
Yes.
If they see you doing something, they're going to do it, whether you tell them to do it or not to do it, whether it's conscious or subconscious. It happens.
Yes. Yes.
So live that. Show the child that. And that is the way to lead them to it.
Yes.
Not to tell them, not to say this is what we're going to do, but you do it and lead them in that direction, because they will follow.
Yes.
Yep. And Charles, there's also a thing in the Bible about lead them.
Yes.
I mean, Tell us what that is.
Train a child in the way that they should go, and when they get older, they won't depart. In other words, what you do is, in other words, you train them. And in my part, and it goes back to this point again, the fact of the matter is that with me, it was important to me to make sure that my children know how to have a relationship with God. Not just with me, but with God, because that was the most important part. Because see, I was limited to what I can do. But every time I needed something done and needed something for them, whether it was from the educational point of view, just from the knowledge point of view, God supplied me with it when I didn't even have it. It was God. It wasn't me. It wasn't. But I taught them, and so now they know, and it gives them also a heart to continue to have compassion and concern and considerations for others, and to want to reach out and help somebody else. My daughter went to college, and she's concerned all of her friends and her family members getting to college and getting an education. But most of all, she tells them, but you got to know that in order to make it through this thing, how I made it through, I kept God first.
Well, buddy, I couldn't agree with you more. Man, this has been an awesome conversation. I want to thank you all for joining. I'll leave the audience here with a little nugget of, there's a little nugget of wisdom. There's a difference between wisdom, education, and logic. And the Bible teaches about all three of those. So if you have any questions on that, contact a pastor, somebody who might be in your life that has that spiritual side, because those are three things that every child needs. Are those three. I want to thank Tennessee Representative Mark White, my friend. Thank you for coming on and teaching us and guiding us through some things. Thank you for this amazing book that you've written. May I call you Dad? They can get that on Amazon, I see. And is that where we should get it?
That's one place, or you can contact me and I'll send you one.
There you go, man. See, you can't get a better representative than one that really wants to represent and really want to talk to you. So thank you so much. Pastor Charles Matthews, I want to thank you for being on here and showing us our godly perspective. Special Agent Man Steve Ball from USISB, thank you for your heads of wisdom. And we will catch you guys tomorrow. So tomorrow's Friday right here, Facebook Live, 7 o'clock. And we're going to have another great conversation with a lot of great topics. So we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
I don't know where it started or where it might end. I turned to a stranger just like a friend, 'cause I was looking for love.